Hey, Margie here. Are you ready to learn about something that can reduce your inflammation, increase your energy, and so much more? Well, if so, you're in the right place because today we're going to learn about C60. And many of us haven't even heard about it. But I promise you, by the end of the talk, you'll know a lot about C60 and its health benefits. And our special guest today is Ken Swartz. He's also known as Ken the Scientist, and he's the founder and chief science officer of C60 Purple Power, a health and wellness company committed to delivering the highest quality C60 products available. Ken has run several research science laboratories over the course of his career and discovered C60 while developing a fusion reactor. During his research, he became aware of the powerful free radical neutralizing properties of C60. Ken believes that your health is your responsibility, and he is on a mission to help people feel empowered to take back control of their health. And in today's talk, we really go into C60, what it does and how it can help us, our bones, our overall health, and so much more. So stay tuned. Welcome, Ken. I'm really excited to have you here on the podcast because this is something a lot of us don't know about, but yet could be so life changing and help so many people. And that's my goal always, that someone out there can be, life can improve by just listening to this podcast. So before we even get started, I love your story, how you found C60 and just how you got to do what you do today. So why don't you fill us in because it really is fascinating.
Okay, well, it kind of started. I'm a research scientist, and so I was working on a project on the called metal oxygen fusion, where you basically confuse metal and oxygen and make a little bit of energy or make new forms of metals. And one of the people, a lot of the scientists who and doctors who've been involved in this, the late doctor this, the late doctor that, because something before their times on the research. So I was kind of worried about that because it's kind of a new nuclear process, and we didn't really know what was going on. So I went out looking for extra radiation protection for my crew and myself, and I discovered this stuff called carbon 60. Its science name is Buckminster fullerene, named after Buckminster Fuller. And that what they give and its nickname is C60. So they give like C60 to one set of rats, and then there's the control rats that didn't get it, and they gave them a fatal dose of radiation, and pretty much all the control rats which didn't get C60 died, and and then the rats that got C60 they lived. So when I learned about that, there's a couple science. I said, "Oh, that's the stuff for us." So I went out and bought a couple sources of C60, and we were taking that during the research, and which is good. And we continued. I kept taking it for after the research was over. We had I had like more energy, maybe better mental clarity, and like the afternoon blahs you have after lunch. Sometimes you kind of get that crash. I wasn't getting that so much, and so I just kept taking it on and off. And I went into my eye doctor about 7 months after starting C60, and my dry macular degeneration had disappeared, which sort of surprised my eye doctor since he'd never seen that before.
Wow. That's quite incredible.
Yeah, and so we also, and part of it was by that time, my electrical engineer Gary Rodriguez, he had developed severe wet macular degeneration, and so I made up some C60 and MCT coconut oil because that's good for people with glucose processing issues, which caused the wet macular degeneration in the first place. And after a year of taking a tablespoon a day, his wet macular degeneration had completely disappeared, healed up, which is another amazing thing. So that's kind of what started the C60 journey. I started making it, for family and friends and myself, and then my alternative healthcare practitioners wanted it, and then their customers wanted it, and it just one thing led to the other, and eventually C60 Purple Power came into being.
Wow. So let's tell us exactly what it is, because for a lot of people, they just haven't heard about it.
Well, C60 is a molecule of 60 carbon atoms shaped just like a little soccer ball. If you look in the back of my screen, and you can see that, you can see the shape, and it's like a hollow soccer ball, and it's probably the most powerful antioxidant known, but it's a selective antioxidant. It only deals with superoxide, and that's produced a lot in your mitochondria, and it's the most damaging oxide in your body. And so it neutralizes that. And it also neutralizes the hydroxyl radical, which is the second most damaging oxidative radical. And that's produced by radiation and a lot of breakdown products of toxic chemicals in your cell. So that's kind of what C60 takes care of those two. But what's really great about C60 is it doesn't interfere with the signaling molecules. Now you need a certain amount of reactive oxidative species to antioxidants because your body uses certain oxidative species to communicate. For instance, like one is the nitrogen oxides that dilates or contracts your capillaries depending on its concentration. So that's really important. Hydrogen peroxide is also a signaling molecule and that used by the body. And then there's others based on sulfur, iron, and zinc. Well, C60 doesn't interfere with any of those, so it has no toxicity at any level. They've given like 1 gram per kilogram in rats, which if you did that with vitamin E, it would probably be fatal. But with C60, it had no toxic effects whatsoever because it only interferes with those the two most damaging oxidative radicals in the body, which the body doesn't use as signaling molecules because they're just too damaging. So that's one of the things. And also another thing C60 does, this is going to go a little science on you, is most molecules that it likes to have a positive charge because oxidative radicals have a negative charge. They got an extra electron, which goes out and it's negatively charged, goes out and cause damage. But C60 likes to have a positive charge, and it does that. It does that by basically absorbing hydrogen ions from the environment. Those are like protons, they're positively charged. It pulls them inside its cage-like structure, as you can see back there. So when a superoxide sticks to the C60, because it's C60 is positive, the oxidative radical is negative, it sticks. The C60 takes that electron and gives it to one of those hydrogen ions, which turns it into hydrogen gas, or the hydroxyl radical, which is basically a water missing a proton. It just gives one of those hydrogen ions to the hydroxyl radical, turns it back into water, and resets itself. So because C60 can reset itself again and again and again, hundreds or dozens of times a second. And that's really what makes it the most powerful antioxidant known.
Wow. So people who are listening and you're taking vitamin C, yes, that's good, but this is going to be a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us what you've seen? What is what's really great is that, and I'm a big into evidence-based, things that have been shown in the research that if you, go under PubMed and put in C60, it's amazing how many research articles have been done. And I think that's the beauty of it. This isn't something that is like, oh yeah, try this, but they've really done great research on it. So why don't you share some of the, well, actually, even before we do that, since this is about, we talk about bones on this podcast, can you just mention, because there's been some interesting research on the osteoclasts, which actually destroy bone. So can you just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so one of the things that you should note about C60, C60 is only biologically active when it's dissolved in an oil as single molecules, or it's polyhydroxynated, and that makes it water soluble. There's particles of C60. You got to make sure research. Particles of C60 have no biologically useful action. They can even be inflammatory. So you have to make sure you get dissolved C60 either in an oil or polyhydroxynated. Well, they had that one research. This was in rats. They basically put an adjutant in, something that would irritate the joints of rats, and then of course they had one where they used just a saline solution, and the other basically they had the C60 in it, and the rats that received the C60 didn't have their joints decay because basically the osteoclasts got kind of out of control and gobbled up the joints. Whereas with C60, it moderates the response of the osteoclasts. But they've
Yeah.
also found this in other things, in human mast cells, which is human mast cells release histamine, and that's what you'd get in an allergy. That's what makes your nose runny and all that. And so they found also they did in human cells in a test tube, they found that C60 moderated the immune response of mast cells, so they didn't produce out a huge amount of histamines. And then they took the research in animals studies, and this is an animal study, doesn't apply directly to humans, but they found they had mice that were highly allergic to something. And so they'd have the cytochrome storm. It's like when people are allergic to peanuts, they have that, or they can anaphylactic shock, and the same with bee stings. So it's that kind of thing, and so they had mice that were designed to do that. And they found that when the mice, you had a control group that didn't get anything, and they were exposed to the adjutant or the irritant, and they had anaphylactic shock, and a lot of them died. And then they had mice that had the same mice, but they were given C60, and their immune response didn't rise to the level of anaphylactic shock. So they basically survive. So it kind of moderates the behavior. It drives everything toward homeostasis. So it goes, which is like balance, right? So it works in the right way. So, and you got to remember, osteoclasts come from white blood cells. They're from white blood cells. So and the immune system is basically white blood cells. So we find it in mast cells, and we find it in the osteoclasts, which so it kind of moderates immune response to a healthy, balanced level.
So what are the most common benefits that people get when they start taking C60?
Well, you get an increase in people notice. What you'll do is get an increase in energy. One of the things is that C60 is characterized as an SOD mimic, that superoxide dismutase, and that takes care of the nastiest of all oxidative radicals, superoxide, which I mentioned earlier. And those are produced in your mitochondria. Mitochondria are little organelles in your cells, and they provide the energy in your cells. So they're like the energy powerhouses, but they, like any power plant, they make pollution. And one of the pollutions they make is superoxide. And then the body makes a enzyme called SOD, superoxide dismutase, to neutralize that superoxide. So C60 is like an SOD mimic. So when you take the C60, and as we get older, uh, our SOD production by the main cells kind of goes down. So our mitochondria don't get enough SOD that they need to fully function, and they just kind of turn down the furnace, right? They don't produce as much energy. So when you take C60, C60 is actively uptaken by the mitochondria. Now they have enough SOD or an SOD mimic, and they turn themselves full on power, right? And so now you're getting all the ATP you used to do. That's the energy molecule of the cell. So now you're going to notice more energy and also more mental clarity, because any cell that has a lot of mitochondria in it is going to be affected first. And the number one cells in your body which have the most mitochondria are your nerve cells. They are just packed with that, because your brain's like 3 pounds, so it's like 1 or 2% of your body weight, yet it uses up 20% of your energy. So that's one place you'll need. And so people get mental clarity, you get more energy everywhere, and also people get motivation back. But that's a little different. They get the dopamine levels rise, which is kind of the motivation molecule. It's the molecule that gets you out of the bed in the morning, and that's because C60 gets rid of it helps reduce inflammation, because when you have inflammation, damage is being done. The hydroxyl radical and the superoxide are being produced by damaged cells. They're kind of breakdown products. And so C60 neutralizes those oxidative radicals before it stimulates the immune response, because first the macrophages will pick up, these oxidative radicals, and then they'll tell the neutrophils, and there's a whole bunch of white blood cells. In the end, it grows red. And so there in inflammation, there's two types. There's like the acute inflammation, like you twist your ankle, right? It swells up and it kind of immobilizes itself, and people recognize that. But there's another thing that goes on, is there's also a pathway which neutralizes dopamine, because dopamine's the motivation molecule, gets you out of the bed in the morning, right? So if you're injured, the body doesn't want you to get up and walk around and do things, so it suppresses dopamine way down. So you just want to lie around, and recover, and that's great if you have acute damage. However, if you've got chronic inflammation, the same things happen, and all you want to do is just lie around. You just don't have any motivation to do anything. Well, when you take C60, it stops the oxidative radicals, which kind of cut off the whole process by which that inflammation forms. And once that chronic inflammation goes down, well, then dopamine production goes up. And so people, want to go out. Like we have a lot of people, they'll start, doing exercise routines they haven't done before for years. So they'll go do a hobby that they used to love to do. That's because that dopamine level has risen in their body, and now they're motivated to go do things.
Oh, I love this for so many reasons. First of all, chronic inflammation is the source of so many problems, one being osteoporosis. Chronic inflammation can just cause so many things. And a lot of times it's not even evaluated for, where people will just treat the condition and not really look at what's causing this chronic, or deal with this chronic inflammation. And as you said, it's such a negative cycle. And, and does affect, I teach happiness. So it totally affects your happiness. So you're on, just like you said, but to be able to break that cycle, not only to reduce inflammation, but to also have more energy and get excited to do things and increase your dopamine. I just think it's such a win-win situation. So
Yeah, and then there's some long-term effects on C60, and obviously in your cells, the C60 now prevents damage. It likes to hang out by the endoplasmic reticulum. For other people out there, that's where all your proteins and other building blocks of your body are made. So it protects those building blocks. So now things like your neurotransmitters and your building blocks for collagen and all those other proteins are being protected. So they're being produced correctly, and then they're being transported because they have ATP to transport them. And so now it allows your cells to build back better. Oh, I shouldn't say that word. It allows your cells to rebuild themselves, in a natural manner. Because C60 doesn't treat anything, doesn't cure any diseases. What it does, it lifts the oxidative burden your cells are under. And once that oxidative burden is lifted, then your cells can heal themselves. We have that capacity within us. There's no magic pill that cures anything. It's just if you lift the oxidative burden, then the cells can do the job for themselves.
I love this. And I know there's been people who've been had thyroid improve conditions.
Yeah, well, this is of course anecdotal. In fact, we've had lots and lots of customers call it, send us things about how it's helped them. Our personal experience with Sierra, she's our all things marketing in our company, and when she came to us, she had Hashimoto's and Atkinson's disease. And Hashimoto's, she hadn't had a functioning thyroid since her 20s, her late 20s. And she's been taking C60 for about 3.5 years, and she's off 2/3 of her thyroid medication because her thyroid's now starting to work again.
So interesting. So the interesting, what I find fascinating is that there's so many benefits, but why have so many people not heard about it?
I think it's because, like anything new, and also another thing about, got to remember, the C60 molecule in and of itself is a natural molecule. It's produced in outer space. That's actually where giant red stars. That's actually from where it was discovered. But like the burnt wick of your candle has like 0.25% C60 in it, and lightning strikes make it, and all that. So it's part of nature, but it's just it can't be patented. So there's not a lot of urge to do research. Initially, see, the original research, the C60 molecules was discovered in 1985 by Harry Croto, Richard Smalley, and Robert Curl. They discovered in 85, and in 1996, they received a Nobel Prize in chemistry for the discovery of this molecule. And then for years and years and years, it was really hard to make. I mean, it was really hard to make. And finally, they figured out some methods of making it. So now they had enough to test it. And of course, the first thing they wanted to do was test for toxicity, right? Here's a molecule found in outer space, and we're making a lab. Could this possibly be toxic? Well, it's a good possibility. So they tested it with rats, and the Botry study is the famous one. And they basically, when they found that it increased Wister rat lifespan by 90% by preventing the occurrence of cancers, cognitive decline, and other degenerative diseases associated with aging. I should note out Wister rats are like really wimpy rats. They commonly die of cancers or other diseases, degenerative diseases. They're specifically died to, specifically designed to do that, right? But when they had the C60, they were like super healthy rats, and they just live long, long, healthy rat lifespan until they, got to their genetic expiration date. So it wouldn't be like increasing your lifespan 90%, so you'd live to be, 180. It just basically what it is. These were wimpy rats, and now they were super healthy rats, and they were able to resist disease and other degenerative conditions common to aging.
Is there anyone that shouldn't take C60? Are there any precautions or certain conditions where you would definitely avoid it?
Yeah, we do have counterindications. One of the things that C60 does, because it restarts the mitochondria, mitochondria also make pregnenolone, which is the precursor molecule for all the hormones. So when you take C60, like your pineal gland starts working, your melatonin levels go up.
Wait, let's stop that for a second. That's so important because a lot of people have issues with the pineal gland and the melatonin's not working and they're not getting enough melatonin. And guess what that affects?
Yep.
Your sleep. So this is huge. This isn't a minor thing. And then sleep affects your bone health as well as every organ in your body. So that's huge.
And so also your pituitary hypothalamus complex, your human growth hormone goes up. The T3 and T4 goes up, right? Because now your cells, first, the mitochondria are fully functioning now because they can get an SOD mimic in them, and then they're producing this pregnenolone. But one of the things in your adrenal glands, they're produced, besides the androgens, which go to testosterone and estrogen, which also start rising. You also have mineral corticoids, and they regulate blood thickness. the mineral balance in your blood, which determines what people commonly call blood thickness. So when you take C60, the underlying causes that are causing your blood to be thick can go away, and now your body's functioning correctly. But if you're taking a blood thinner medication and you're on C60, now your blood could get too thin rather rapidly, because this changes rather rapidly. So if you're taking a blood thinner, you need to consult with your doctor before you take C60. And if you wanted to continue with that, you and your doctor would have to set up a testing regimen, much more testing regimen, because chances are, your your amount you need will go down. And this is also true in to a lesser extent, but it's not as big of a deal, is with hormone replacement therapies. Like we had a 7-year-old guy. He had testosterone levels of I think 300, which is pretty low. And so he started. So the doctor gave him creams. He got up to 700. He started taking C60. He went in for testing on his testosterone level. It was 1200, right? So his doctor took him off the cream, so he didn't need it anymore. The same way Sierra got off 2/3 of her thyroid medication. So if you got something like that, you're taking medication for, just a little more testing would be really important. Consult with your doctor and then get more testing regimen, because your underlying need for those things might go down, and you might need to adjust your intake.
I think it's just always a good point to let your doctor know what you're doing, because as you said, I was just thinking while you were saying that, yes, the thought people who are on thyroid medication for years, if it's going to get
Yeah,
tested and just, follow it, if it's going to make a
yeah.
difference in how
I
your
should
thyroid's acting.
Yeah, and I want to talk about some of that. Well, we think what's happening from this and the other customers, and we have other C60 people. They have their, you know, and I want to most C60 producers, the big ones are pretty legitimate, make a good product. It's just like the CBD market. We've had a lot of like fly by nighters come in and really aren't giving either. There's no C60 in their products, or they're really low quality C60 or low concentrations. So you have to be careful when buying C60. Just letting you know, C60 costs more by weight than gold. So your C60 product from whatever legitimate producer you get is going to be a little expensive, but just be aware of that. So if somebody's giving you the super cut bargain deal, it probably isn't really C60, and or it's low concentration. But back to the thing, what we think would happen with Sierra and these other things is, one of the things C60 does is, in our bodies we have what are called senescent cells, and that you can think of those as zombie cells. Their telomeres have come to a shortened length,
Wait,
and
stop. Tell everybody what telomeres are, because not
okay,
everybody does.
telomeres are like little DNA strands on the end of your chromosomes. And every time your cells divide, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And if they get too short, your chromosomes kind of will break apart. And and usually the process goes on that when the chromosomes get too short, there's a thing called apoptosis, the programmed cell death. But that sometimes takes a while and doesn't happen as it should. It eventually will happen. So some cells become senescent. What they do is they go from ATP oxygen burning to fermentation, like yeast beer. They're fermentating, and that's like 1/20th as efficient as a regular cell, but they also produce toxins which poison the cells around them. So senescent cells are a really negative thing to have in your body. Well, when you have C60 is uptaken by these senescent cells, and then and it goes into the mitochondria, and it turns the mitochondria back on, because in senescent cells they take away the SOD and catalase that the mitochondria need to function. So the mitochondria have to start going into the fermentation process to keep going, right? So everything is just jacked up in a senescent cell. Well, C60 starts the mitochondria back up. They start producing ATP, starting the whole process of rebooting the cell. But they also send messages to the nuclear DNA, the main DNA that controls everything in the cell. And if they don't get the right messages back, and they won't if it's a senescent cell, the mitochondria themselves can initiate apoptosis, which is a form of programmed cell death. And the cell breaks down into apoptotic bodies, which are then taken up by the phagocytes. But this is non-inflammatory. So when your senescent cells go through programmed cell death, apoptosis, it's a non-inflammatory process. And then once the senescent cells are wiped out by the C60, well, then the organ or tissue doesn't have enough cells to function the way it is. So it sends out messages to the stem cells. And then the stem cells come in and take the place. They'll convert from being like a general purpose cell to becoming to becoming a new cell. You know, it could be whether it's a thyroid or a muscle cell or a brain cell, whatever it is, it changes itself in that, but it has a full set of telomeres. So we've had people that have been taking C60 a long time, and their actual biological age, according to telomeres, actually goes down. So they're literally getting younger. It's not because the telomeres in any particular cell increase. It's because those senescent cells with really shortened telomeres are gone and they're replaced by stem cells. And and now the average telomere length has increased.
Wow, and they use that. That's a measure of aging. They use telomere length, so that's very interesting. So, yeah.
Yes, and so that's one of the things we know. Yeah, because we had some people, like a guy in his well, 50s, and he had telomeres end up a guy in his late 30s. So that was over like 5 years of C60. So these things can happen. And the other thing we also noticed, that people that take C60, they have huge stem cell levels. Because we had a guy, 70-year-old guy, goes into the doctor. This has happened a lot of times, and you know they're doing stem cell therapy, where they're pulling it out of the blood, and they say, "Wow, you said this is one of the highest stem cell counts we've seen, and you know he's in his 70s. You know what are he doing?" Of course, he told him, and we had like a Russian billionaire who was taking our products, and he used to go. He's in his 80s, right? He used to take 6 draws of blood to get enough stem cells to get a treatment. Now he only needs 1 draw of blood. So it really increases the stem cell level, and that's, I think, maybe how it could possibly help with osteoporosis, because you know osteogenetic cells, those are the ones that turn into your osteoblast or your osteocytes. So if you in the blood cells, it seems to help with the immune system, because now you have a huge amount of stem cells and the immune system gets challenged. It can call up this army to convert themselves into new white blood cells. Well, the same thing may be happening. I can't say this. You know, we do have some indications in testing, but so it may stimulate the production of osteogenetic cells, which then can convert themselves into osteocytes or osteoblasts or whatever they are, whatever they need to be.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fantastic? I guess it would be great if people did some more testing, but this sounds so. Let's talk about the practicality of it. How much do you need to take?
Okay, usually what you need to take, probably for, well, depending on your age. Like if you're, let's say if you're in your 30s or 40s and weigh, let's say 160, let's say 160 pounds or something around there, 140, 150, you know, something around there. Probably a teaspoon a day is appropriate. And also when you first start off, you want to start off slow, like a quarter of a teaspoon, then work it up to half a teaspoon, and then up to a full teaspoon. Kind of gradually work it up, because it will have some detox effects. Once your mitochondria start going and everything else starts working again, it's going to start dumping the trash. And so you want to take more water and just realize there'll be a little bit of detox as things start, as the trash gets dumped.
Can I
And
ask you
then,
a question on that then? Is it important that your detox pathways are working properly then? So someone who's constipated and someone who has issues, do they need to deal with that first?
uh, that would uh, that would be that would be a good that would be a good thing to do. Yeah, I would think taking care of that. I mean, yeah, making sure that everything's flowing good, drinking more water, and of course, and see, remember, C60 it just lifts the oxidative burden your cells are under. It doesn't it won't fix other things. So I mean, good nutrition, proper supplementation, healthy lifestyle choices, exercise, getting sleep. All of these things are, breathing clean air. All of these things are really important to good health. And so C60 doesn't replace any of those, or your medications. C60, one thing, C60 doesn't interact with any medications, nutrients, supplements, minerals. It doesn't interact. It only interacts with 2 things we know of. It's like the cousin of diamond. It's allotropic carbon, is the superoxide oxidative radical and the hydroxyl radical. It doesn't interact with anything else in your body.
That's great. So, okay. So, but the way that you have it is in different forms. So why don't you just explain,
Yeah,
because you
we
need
have
to
it in
have it in the oil.
yeah, we have it in 3 different oils. C60 has no solubility in water. So we basically dissolve it into 3 healthy oils, and we have it in all full organic olive oil, organic avocado, and organic MCT oil. And each of these oils have different benefits. And so, obviously, we know about the olive oil, the Mediterranean diet. People have been using it thousands of years. It's really healthy. And then the avocado olive oil, though, when C60 was first out, when I went out and got stuff for myself and my crew, for everything was in the extra virgin olive oil. because that's what the research was done, because it's well characterized, everybody knows. But if I took, like, let's say, a tablespoon or two of olive oil, I may have to go visit the bathroom. So I knew that I could take avocado oil because it's so much easier to be digested. So I started putting it in avocado oil. And also for my friend Gary, as I mentioned before, I put it in MCT coconut oil, organic MCT coconut oil, because MCT, that means medium chain triglycerides, and your liver will turn those into ketones, which your cells can use as an immediate energy source. So if they can't access glucose as an energy source, they can access the ketones. And so people with glucose processing issues and athletes like MCT coconut oil because it's an instant boost of energy. And so that's why I put it in there. And but MCT coconut, because they're shorter triglycerides, hold a little less C60, about half the C60 as the others. So you need to bump it up. So as I mentioned before, if you're in a health in your 30 or 40s and you're taking a teaspoon is probably good for 160 pounds. If you're in your 60s or 70s, you probably need to bump it up to about a tablespoon. But there really isn't any need to do more than a tablespoon unless you're a really big person, if you're older. So it's kind of like body weight and age. So a tablespoon is probably all you never need if you're in your 60s and 70s, or that's what I use. I
And if
just
you
turned
did the
60.
MCT, then it would be 2 tablespoons. Is that what you're
Uh,
saying?
well, it could be, yeah, a tablespoon and a half or something if you're using that. So it's and also a good thing if you break it down. If you've never taken oil before, we urge you to take the oil with a food because it helps aid digestion. And also sometimes if you take a bunch of little doses rather than just one big dose in the morning, we should also make sure you take it in the morning because it tends to be stimulatory. So if you took it late at night, it could keep you up. So that's why we recommend, like coffee, take it in the morning.
Can it be warmed? I mean, does anything happen to it if you put it in a warm drink?
Oh no, it won't hurt and don't. We could you could put it in boiling things that like boiling. We probably don't recommend putting it in like sautéing or baking because that might damage it. But a soup or anything that boiling. I mean, the C60 molecule is pretty much indestructible, but the oil itself can go bad. And so if you overheat it and stuff. So we just recommend, yeah, it could go in a salad. You could use it in a salad dressing. You could use it in your hot coffee or in a soup or something. That's not a problem at all. Just
Easy.
read it.
Yeah, this is really they're very simple. So how long do people need to take it before they'll notice something happens?
Usually about a week. You'll notice, after about a week, sometimes you'll get a little detox in the first few days, and then that usually goes away after a while. Just drink a little extra water. And then probably within a week, you're going to be noticing like more mental clarity, a little bit more energy if you're taking a teaspoon to a tablespoon a day. And 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 just as general overall feeling of health. And that's probably part of the dopamine process starts going up as when your inflammation starts being suppressed and all that stuff. And then you get other benefits in the long-term healing. But that's as cells and organs rebuild themselves. And so we think a lot of that, like we think what happened with Sierra, that it went back 2/3 as the senescent cells in her thyroid were replaced by new stem cells, right? The senescent cells apoptosis out, the stem cells came in, and it's those stem cells that are doing the work. So that might also happen in all the glands, like your pineal gland, your pituitary gland. So you're getting your senescent cells are being wiped out, they're being replaced by stem cells, and those stem cells can do the full job they did when you were young. And so, but that's a gradual thing. That took years to happen. She's been on it like 3 years to get down to 2/3 of her medication. So that doesn't happen overnight. So there's a long-term benefits, and then there's the short-term ones.
Oh, sounds, I mean, it's I've heard of this and I've been meaning to do it, but now I'm absolutely going to start. So I will let everybody know. But it's just, I look for easy tweaks and easy things that can help us feel better. And this on so many levels to reduce inflammation as well as can help our bones, can help our joints, can help our thyroid, can help our hormones and mental clarity, just things because we want to feel good as we age. Nobody wants to have problems. So I think it's just such a great thing. But not all, as you said, there's a lot of good ones, but not all things are created equal. So I know yours is organic. Is that something important? Tell us the important things that people need to look out for, like why you've chosen certain things for your product.
The number one thing you need to look out for is sublimated C60. Sublimation, if you remember from your high school chemistry class, is the cousin of evaporation. It's when a solid turns into a gas and then turn back into a solid. So we use sublimated C60. Usually when you produce the C60 It's just like a light helium gas chamber with a couple carbon rods that we vaporize. And if you do it right, maybe 10% turns into C60. Then it's the separation process. We use sublimation. So you put it in the sublimator, you heat it up to 400 degrees Celsius in a vacuum pretty much with the light. And then it turns into a gas, floats to the other side of the sublimator where it condenses. And that's how we get 99.99% pure C60, right, through the sublimation process. Now, there's another process that people purify C60, and that's the solvent process. And they use methylbenzene, which is okay, yeah, which is also known as toluene, which is a powerful industrial solvent. And then they'll dissolve it, run it through diffusion columns, and they'll flush it out. And now you got C60 and methylbenzene, and then they boil the benzene off, basically, the methylbenzene off, but you can never get rid of all of it. So you want to make sure that your C60 comes from a sublimated source, and that way you know it's never been exposed to solvents. And then on the oil side of things, we kind of have the Goldilocks of oils. We use all organic olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT coconut oil. And people know about these oils and their health benefits. Now, there's some oils you don't want things in, like canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, and corn oil. See, those are all omega-6 and 9 heavy, and our bodies really aren't designed to digest that. They're designed to do one-to-one ratios of omega-3s to omega-6s, and so those oils tend to be inflammatory, and you don't even want those in your diet anywhere. So basically, and then there's other oils which are really good for you, like flaxseed oil and fish oil and krill oil and even hemp seed oil. And those are really omega-3 and healthy oils for you. The only problem is they go rancid really quickly. So like if you're ever buying a fish oil, never buy a fish oil off the shelf in a store. You always want to buy your fish oils or your hemp oils or flax oils from the refrigerated section of your health food store, because those go rancid really fast. So we didn't want to use those oils because if we were to bottle them and send them to people, they could go rancid before the person uses them. So we picked the Goldilocks of oils, olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil, because they're really healthy oils and they're stable. So that's the choice we made on that.
Oh, I love that. And what's the purple? Like, where did the purple come from?
Oh, that's one of the things is when you take in a clear oil like coconut oil, when you put C60 in it, it turns it purple. So the color of dissolved C60 is actually purple. And so when you put it in like the tan of avocado or olive oil, it turns it an amber color. So you can just look at your oil and tell, you can actually see the concentration of C60 by the purple color. And so because that's why we call it purple power, because it's a purple molecule and turns the oils purple. So that's just kind of how why we picked the name.
Well, I'm wearing purple and everything I do is purple. So
Oh,
I'm a big purple person. So I love that, quite honestly. And you're giving everybody a nice coupon if they want to
oh
try
yes, we
this.
are. We are giving a 20% off for anyone listening here or in the future, and it's Happy Bones. And if you go to order, you go to C60 Purple Power and go to the order page, and you can order and you order the product, and there's a place where the coupon code will pop up, and just enter Happy Bones, and that will give you 20% off on all C60 Purple Power products.
Well, thank you so much. And I'll have the link in the show notes. So to make life easy for everybody. And yeah, this is great. Is there anything we could talk on and on? It's just fascinating to me. And I just can't believe I have not used this, which I'm going to be starting immediately. But is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to share with everybody before we end?
Not so much. We covered pretty good. One thing, C60 is just part of a healthy lifestyle choice. And so it goes with a lot of things like eating, organic, healthy foods, drinking clean water, avoiding toxic situations, personal and environmental, and all those and healthy lifestyle choices. So all those things together, it's part of all of that. It's not a magic pill, but and also we always encourage people to do their own research, because that's really important. I mean, you need to be your or third choice or third, choice on what, so that you can make your proper health decisions. Because the only one that's really responsible and really is going to be paying the price for good or bad health is you. So we really encourage people to take control of their own health destinies and make their own decisions.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Ken. There's no magic pill for anything. And I think that's sort of what I've been trying to on the podcast. It's a combination, everything, every piece. But the more we can add, the more we can take away that's not helping us, the better we'll feel for every part of our, every part of our being, as well as, our happiness, our bones, and just our overall health. And that's sort of what we all want. So I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this with us and all the work you did. This wasn't easy to, share what worked for you and all of a sudden just do all as a scientist really take this to the next level with your company. So thank you for all the work you do, as well as sharing all this great information with all of us.
Well, glad to be on and share the message of C60 with you and your listeners.
Oh, thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Ken and now have an understanding of C60, what it is, as well as all its health benefits. The link to learn more about the products Ken talked about will be in the show notes, as well as make sure to use the coupon code Happy Bones to get 20% off. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.